Yes, people, welcome back to the studio. In today's video, we'll be looking at how I arrange my tracks. So this is a point in your production where you've managed to put down your first track, or you're working towards it and you're trying to figure out exactly where to bring things in, how long your track should be, how long the drops, the intros, etc. should be, in order to make it work for you as a DJ, an artist, and also someone who just wants to listen to your music. So I'm gonna be looking at a project that I've made recently, and running you through how I've done the arrangement, and hopefully you can pick some bits up from this video. So yep, let's get stuck in. Okay, so this is a new one that I've made. Slightly different vibe to my normal stuff. Straight away we're in the arrangement view in Ableton, and you can see this is my project. If I just make each thing a bit bigger to see, you can see I've arranged things quite nicely in this one. The first thing I'm going to point out is when you're arranging your tracks, it's very useful to add indicators. So you see at the top here, I've got some writing, just to show you where things are coming in, where the breakdowns are, where the second drop is, where the first drop is. And I've also added intros for DJs to mix, and also the end, like the end of the track is for DJs to mix out. But also I've added an indicator, just a little point saying this is where the track's going to end for like the radio edit. So a radio edit basically is the version that you'll be hearing on Spotify or SoundCloud or Apple Music, where the track you're listening to is basically shortened, because when you're a listener, you don't really want to be listening to like the drums at the end of the track and at the beginning. So to get these indicators, then first of all, all you've got to do is press Control, click the location on the top where you want to add a locator, press Control, and it'll say Add Locator. So you just add the locator, type away, and now that can be seen on the track. So let's just give you a quick play of this track I made. I'll play just the first breakdown, first drop. Yeah, so a bit more of a two-steppy sort of vibe, this one. But yeah, so this is the first drop. Now, the way I've gone about this is I made my track I added all the elements in this first 1 to 9 bars, to put down the ideas, what I wanted to have in the track, and then I built it out. As you can see, so the first breakdown is on the 33rd bar here. This just gives you a good amount of time. You can have a look at the timings at the bottom. That gives you just under a minute for the track to take, it takes a minute for the track to get to the first breakdown. Again, with arrangement, there is no right or wrong. You can arrange the track however you like. I've seen videos where a few artists will suggest either having the first drop on the 33rd bar. And when I'm saying 33rd bar, you see the numbers at the top here, number 1, 9, 17. That's the bars. Music is made up of bars. And it's like when you're learning to mix, like you count from 8 to 16 bars, when to bring the track in. Little bit of music theory, but really, if you're if you're beginning to make music, all you've got to know really is 33rd bar is usually about a minute into your track. So you've started off the track with just the drums. So this just starts with the drums, this one. And a little vocal. First 8 bars, no kick drum, just the the other elements of the drums and the vocal. Then we bring in the kick. So so basically from bar 1 to 33, you're slowly looking to bring in elements of the track, maybe the drums, maybe a vocal, that's just going to help. I always like to think of it as a DJ, because I did start to DJ before I produced. So when I'm mixing a track in, you know, I want the next track coming in to blend as well, as good as possible with the track before. So having the drums, not having the bass, not having like a key vocal, just having the drums in for the beginning, from maybe the first bar to, let's just say with this track, the 33rd bar, it gives time for you to mix in, the track to be introduced. So this is the rest of the track. So on bar 25, this is where I've introduced all the drums that I'll be using. I've also got a little piano hit. Piano hits across the track, but because it's such a small element, it's only 3 notes. I've teased it basically towards the beginning of the track, just to kind of add a bit more spice than just having, say, drums for the first minute. One thing I also like to do with my arrangement is, if I'm looking at my track and I have a look at my kicks, for example, I've got kicks from like, so this is like 8 bars, 8 bars. Sometimes if I've got kicks that just keep on going, what I'll do is I'll just take them out. You see these little gaps here. This is where I've, to kind of change the direction of the track or add a bit of tension and energy. You can, so I'll give you an example. So after the first drop, so you just take elements out, bring them back in. So this is part of, yeah, just a bit of a tip on arrangement. But yeah, so the first party track before the first drop, you kind of just want to introduce the drums, add maybe 1 or 2 elements. I've got a little piano. I've got a call and respond on the synth and piano, but you don't even need that. You know, I've got a little vocal that plays across the whole track, pretty much, which is just this. So alongside the drums, it just adds that little bit of energy and tension to the track. So yeah, the first breakdown comes in at bar 33, and then I've got 8 bars basically for the build up to the first drop. So the bass comes in on the 41st bar. So obviously the bass is, you know, bass and the kick are the chunkiest parts of your track. That's where the real energy comes. That's where the core of the track begins, really. But so the first breakdown on 33, I've given myself 8 bars to create a bit more energy. I've taken out the kick drum. I've added some strings to add to the energy. I've got some effects as well. I've got a little riser, cymbal riser beforehand. So this first drop has got most of the track elements in. It's got the vocal, it's got the drums, and I'll be playing this first section of the track with the bass line for what? So this first chunk is 8 bars, 16, 24, 32. So for about just under a minute. So again, this is kind of just the way that I work. So I'll kind of listen to the track for as long as I feel is needed before the second breakdown comes in. What I've actually done is that should be breakdown 2. It's not breakdown 1. What you can do is you can use reference tracks, which I will do another video on, which essentially is you have at the top of your project, you have another track that's already been made. I'll give you an example so you can have a look. Insert audio track. So what some people do is they basically have this space at the top. I'm just going to drag in one of my tracks I've made recently. So I'd put this at the top of my project. And so this is obviously a track that I've made, or you could use someone else's. And you can see straight away if you listen to it. Bit loud, sorry. So you could literally listen to the track, the reference track, this would be called. And using my tip of adding indicators, you can listen to the track and you can see exactly how long they've had their intro, where the drops come in. So obviously this is a breakdown at this point, so I could maybe add an indicator there. So you use a reference track to essentially see how someone else has laid their track out, and then you just copy the layout. Really good way if you aren't too sure on how to organize your stuff. It's a good way to start. So going back to my arrangement, I've got drop one, I've got breakdown 1, drop 1. Breakdown 2 is longer than breakdown 1. This is like the main kind of suspense energy part of the track where, you know, people have heard the first bit, they're pretty excited, it breaks down, and now, you know, you add a few more elements. I'll play you my breakdown. So this breakdown is actually 3 times longer than the first one. You can see there's just 2 boxes there, and there's 2, 4, 6 boxes here. So this just gives it enough time to tease the vocal. A lot of the elements are the same as the first drop. So on this second drop, as I've indicated up here, I've just added a few more elements to it. So I've got another synth. I've got a few more bits, but essentially as each drop comes in, you kind of want to be adding 1 or 2 more elements that's going to differentiate between the first drop, excuse me, and the second drop. To keep the track interesting, to kind of keep it exciting to listen to. Yeah, so you kind of want to add a few more elements after each drop, whether it's drums, vocal, whatever. Or you can take stuff away, you know, you could even have, if I did this build up, take away the drums. So you can take stuff away, bring them back, just get creative. But yeah, so essentially my drop 2 lands on about 2 minutes 55, 54 in the track. And then from here, the track's got time to play out. As you can see, I've got 16 bars, take away the kick. And then after this, you know, your track's reaching into like 3-minute 40 plus territory. So the likelihood is you're probably going to think about, at this point, changing the track, or the track's going to start taking elements away and coming to an end. The way I sometimes do it is I've got the main chunk of the track, the core, like I said here. After drop 1, you've got drop 2 with an extra bit of core. And then towards the end of this core bit, I just take away all the drums, well, apart from the kick. So then, yeah, so you've got 8 bars of just the drums, the kick, the kick and the bass with this little vocal I had at the beginning. And as you can see here, this indicates the end of the radio edit. So this part would be where on like streamers, or whether I had like a shorter version, this would be where that shorter version ended after just over 4 minutes, which is quite a long radio edit, to be fair. So then after this section is kind of just for the DJs. This is where you'll probably be mixing this track out, taking your next mix in. At this point, the intro and the beginning, really, it doesn't matter how long they are, because it doesn't matter how long, you know, the more time, the better as a DJ you need to mix your next track in, next track out. The last thing you want is to have a track that basically goes, you know, from kick and bass and all these elements to suddenly just ends, because how are you supposed to mix that as a DJ? So as you can see, I've got about 4 minutes 6, 4 minutes 5. When I keep on saying these minutes, by the way, if you haven't picked up, if you look at the bottom of the arrangement view, you can see these little indicators of time. That's where I'm referring to. So 4 minutes. The end of the track is just over 5 minutes long. So you've got a good minute between this part, the end of the radio edit, and here, the mix out time for the DJs to mix out your track. So for arrangement, this is you know, quite a quick overview of how I would arrange stuff. Feel free to use the reference with regards to, like, you know, intro of your track from bar 1 to 33. That's where your first breakdown comes in, your first drops on bar 41. This will give you a good amount of time for really whatever sort of track you're making to have time for every element to shine and to come through. Little tips on, you know, cutting. If your track's sounding good, but it's sounding a little bit samey, just try chopping a few things out, like I've done just before the end of the bar, so it adds that variation. To just help the arrangement move, effects are really useful. So I've got some risers here that just come in just before the drop. They come in after the drop. So the first one, this little white noise, just indicates to the listener that there's a big drop come in, or there's like the next section of the tracks come in. You can do it with the crash. The crash is like the opposite. The like little fading white noise gives an indication, especially on the breakdowns, when there's you know, a bit of time to kind of catch your breath and for the track to leave and come back. Without the crash, you'll hear it, and we'll turn the riser up. Without it sounds just a little bit weird. Just not as smooth. The transition just isn't as smooth. So yeah, arrangement view, there you go. This track I've got hopefully will come out soon, probably on my label Groove Cuts. But hopefully, yeah, I'd say the key things to take away from this video is using indicators at the top of your track. Press Control, click on the top, and you can add, insert add locator. So using locators to basically plan out where each part of the track is going to come in is really useful. Having a look at reference tracks is also really good, because you can basically see how other artists have set their music out, and you can copy their structure. And I'd say the third key point to take away is, well, first of all, you can copy mine if you want, feel free. But also, when you're adding elements after each drop, try and add something else in, some sound or some drums or some vocal, because that's what's going to make your track stay interesting to the ear, stay catchy, keep the listener on their toes. If you've kind of got, you know, if you make yourself a groove at the beginning, which is the whole track, and all you're doing is recycling it across the whole 4 or 5 minutes, that can get a little bit samey. So chopping stuff in and out, adding new elements is always a good way to keep the arrangement interesting. So yeah, hope you enjoyed. This video was made based on recommendations that I'd asked about. Please let me know if there's anything else you want me to cover. If you think, you know, I've covered this arrangement video well, or if you want to go into a bit more depth on exactly how I kind of learned to organize or arrange my stuff. Like I said, there is no right or wrong with arrangement. If it sounds cool and if it flows on the dance floor, then, you know, that's great news. So yeah, stay tuned for the next video and enjoy.